Imagine being Rachel Reeves. You are the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer in British history. You should be riding a wave of historic achievement. Instead, you are getting absolutely eviscerated on live television by a columnist who does not mince words, while simultaneously being grilled in Parliament like a suspect in police procedural. And the worst part? You have got no one to blame but yourself. Welcome to December 2025, where Rachel Reeves is discovering that you can only dodge accountability for so long before someone, in this case the magnificently blunt Carole Malone, calls you out on national television and leaves you looking like a deer caught in headlights. Quick favor, if you are already hooked on this political demolition, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Over 94% of you have not subscribed yet. It is completely free. Takes 1 second, and it keeps British Mirror bringing you the political tea you absolutely need. Cheers if you did. Now, let us get into this glorious takedown. So here's what happened. Rachel Reeves appeared before the House of Commons Treasury Committee to answer questions about the budget leaks that have turned her entire operation into a laughing stock. But while that parliamentary grilling was happening, columnist and broadcaster Carole Malone was on the Daily Expresso podcast absolutely tearing into the Chancellor with a kind of brutal honesty that makes politicians break out in a cold sweat. And honestly, it was magnificent to watch. Malone did not hold back. She accused Reeves of failing to take responsibility for causing chaos in the markets following her autumn budget tax raids. She said, and I am quoting directly here, "This woman will not take responsibility for what she has done. She talks about growth. We have no growth." Boom. Right out of the gate. No warm-up. No pleasantries. Just straight facts delivered with precision of a sniper. And Malone was just getting started. She went on to say that Reeves is entirely discredited, that no one believes her anymore, and that for a Chancellor, that is catastrophic. Which, when you think about it, is absolutely spot on. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is supposed to be the person who manages a nation's finances, inspires confidence in the markets, and reassures the public that the economy is in safe hands. If no one believes a word you say, you might as well be shouting into the void. But let us rewind a bit and look at why Carole Malone was so fired up, because this is not just about one bad budget. This is about a pattern of behavior that has eroded trust in Rachel Reeves to the point where even her own supporters are starting to squirm. It all goes back to the so-called £22 billion black hole that Reeves has been banging on about since Labour took power. She has repeated this figure so many times it has become her signature catchphrase. The previous Conservative government left us a £22 billion black hole. We had no choice but to raise taxes. Everything bad is their fault. Except here is the problem. That £22 billion black hole claim has been seriously questioned. Carole Malone pointed out that on November the 4th, Reeves knew absolutely that the country was in a better state than she had told us. But she chose to talk down the situation anyway. She deliberately painted a bleaker picture than reality to justify massive tax rises. And that, my friends, is political manipulation at its finest. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. It is like telling your parents you need 200 quid for textbooks when you actually just want to blow it on a night out. Except in this case, it is not 200 quid. It is £30 billion worth of tax rises imposed on the British public. And the Office of Budget Responsibility, the independent body that is supposed to keep chancellors honest, reportedly discredited her claim about the black hole. Which means Reeves has been running around for months using a figure that does not hold up to scrutiny. That is not just misleading. That is potentially dishonest. And when you are the Chancellor of the Exchequer, honesty is not optional. It is the bare minimum requirement for the job. So when Carole Malone says Reeves is entirely discredited, she is not just throwing shade. She is stating a fact. Because if you build your entire economic narrative on a foundation of dodging numbers and then get caught out, people stop trusting you. Markets stop trusting you. And when markets stop trusting you, things get messy very quickly. Which brings us to the chaos in the markets that Malone mentioned. Because Reeves's budget did not just annoy people politically. It genuinely spooked financial markets. Borrowing costs went up. The pound took a hit. Investors started getting nervous. And all of this happened because the Chancellor unveiled a massive tax grab without a credible growth plan to back it up. She raised taxes on businesses, frozen income tax thresholds, and basically told the markets, "Trust me, this will work." And the markets looked at her and said, No thanks. Carole Malone nailed it when she said Reeves has caused chaos in the markets and will not admit it, because that is exactly what has happened. Instead of taking responsibility, Reeves keeps pointing fingers at the Tories, insisting that everything is their fault and she had no choice, which might be a politically convenient narrative, but it does not hold up when you look at the actual facts. Yes, the Conservatives left problems, but Reeves has made things worse with her approach, and refusing to acknowledge that just makes her look delusional. Now let us talk about what happened in the House of Commons, because that was its own special brand of political theatre. Conservative MP Dame Harriet Baldwin was grilling Reeves about her budget, and she asked a very simple question. So you chose not to put any pro-growth measures in this budget? It is a fair question, right? Because Reeves has been talking endlessly about growth, but the actual budget was light on policies that would genuinely boost economic growth. So Dame Harriet called her out on it, and Reeves absolutely lost it. She snapped back, no, like a teacher scolding a student who dared to question her. Then she said, Dame Harriet, do not contradict what I have just said. Which is a wild thing to say to a member of Parliament who is literally doing her job by holding the government to account. Reeves then insisted that she did not say there were no growth measures in the budget, even though her answer strongly implied exactly that. Carole Malone watched this exchange and said Reeves is rattled. And she is absolutely right. Reeves is used to getting her own way and spewing whatever nonsense she wants to say, as Malone put it. But when someone tries to pin her down, she does not like it. She gets defensive. She snaps. She deflects. Because most of what she says, according to Malone, is rubbish. And you know what? It is hard to argue with that assessment after watching her performance. The best bit, though, was when Malone addressed the budget leaks. Because this has been the scandal that just keeps on giving. Reeves's budget was leaked so comprehensively before she even delivered it that journalists were tweeting out details hours in advance. It was a catastrophic failure of operational security, and it made the entire government look incompetent. When Reeves appeared before the Treasury Committee, she admitted that the leaks were unacceptable and damaging. But then she tried to pretend she knew nothing about them. Carole Malone was having absolutely none of it. She said, "This is a joke. We have had more leaks on this budget than I have ever known in my journalistic career." For her to say that she did not know anything about them is a joke. She is not telling the truth about this. Malone went on to say that Reeves is now launching an inquiry, but it is a sham. There will be no culprit at the end of this inquiry because the true culprit is Reeves herself. And honestly, that is probably accurate, because either Reeves sanctioned the leaks as part of some misguided media strategy, or she completely lost control of her own operation. Either way, it reflects appallingly on her. If you are the Chancellor and you cannot stop your own budget from leaking like a rusty bucket, how are you supposed to manage a multi-trillion-pound economy? But here is where it gets even more absurd. When pressed on what pro-growth measures were actual in the budget, Reeves highlighted plans to build a new runway at Heathrow Airport and a film studio in Marlow, Buckinghamshire. Let that sink in. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is being asked how she plans to grow the British economy, and her big examples are an airport runway and a film studio. Now, infrastructure projects are important. Nobody is denying that. But when you have just imposed £30 billion worth of tax rises and caused chaos in the markets, pointing to an airport runway as your growth strategy is like bringing a water pistol to a house fire. It is not going to cut it. Dame Harriet Baldwin pointed out that the budget leaks have actually prevented investment in the UK. Because when investors see a government that cannot keep its own secrets, that leaks budget details all over the press, they start to wonder what else is going wrong behind scenes. And when investors get nervous, they take their money elsewhere. Which means Reeves has not just embarrassed herself politically, she has actively harmed the UK's economic prospects. Carole Malone summed it all up perfectly. She said, "You cannot believe what she says." And that, right there, is the core problem. Rachel Reeves has burned through so much credibility, told so many half-truths, dodged so much responsibility, that people just do not trust her anymore. Not the markets, not investors, not the public, and increasingly, not even her own MPs. And the thing is, this did not have to happen. Reeves could have been honest from the start. She could have said, "Yes, we are raising taxes. Here is why, here is what we will do with the money, and here are the growth measures that will offset it." She could have owned her decisions and built a credible narrative. But instead, she blamed everything on the Tories, made up dodgy figures, lost control of her own budget process, and is now flailing around trying to defend the indefensible. The problem for Reeves is that once you lose credibility in politics, it is almost impossible to get it back. People have long memories. Every time she stands up now and makes a claim, people will remember the black hole that was not really a black hole, the leaks she knew nothing about, the growth that never materialized, the tax rises she said would not happen. It all adds up to a portrait of someone who is either incompetent or dishonest, possibly both. And Carole Malone, bless her, was not afraid to say it out loud on live television. She called Reeves out for dodging responsibility, for talking nonsense, for causing market chaos, and for lying about the leaks. It was brutal, it was necessary, and it was absolutely glorious to watch. Because too often in British politics, people dance around the truth, use euphemisms, and avoid calling out obvious failures. Malone did none of that. She went straight for the jugular and did not let go. So where does this leave Rachel Reeves? Well, in a pretty dire position, to be honest. She is facing a credibility crisis, market instability, a leaked budget scandal, and growing questions about whether she is fit for the job. Her own MPs are starting to mutter. The opposition is absolutely loving this. And now she has got high-profile commentators like Carole Malone publicly eviscerating her on national media.